Welcome back. Well, now we're turning our attention to, it's got to do with crude revenue, stolen crude. But as a matter of fact, just a little bit of a background here. Now, there was this policy document which was titled Stemming the Increasing Cost of Oil Theft to Nigeria, published by the Nigeria Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, NETI. That document stated that crude oil and refined products worth $41.9 billion were stolen from Nigeria in the last 10 years. The breakdown shows that we lost $38.5 billion on crude theft alone. That's $1.56 billion on domestic crude and another $1.8 billion on refined petroleum products between 2009 and 2018.
Well, that's right. Now, to put this in perspective, that's an average of $11 million daily, which translates to $349 million in a month and about $4.2 billion annually. And that's to crude and product losses arising from stealing, process lapses, and pipeline vandalism.
Let's break it down even further. Figures from government put the loss at between 150,000 to 250,000 barrels per day. But data from private studies estimate the figure to be between 200,000 and 400,000 barrels per day. This implies that Nigeria may be losing up to a fifth of its daily crude oil production to oil thieves and pipeline vandals.
Recently, some allegations have been leveled against the NNPC by an oil trading firm, Semano Sade CV. In a letter to the group managing director of the NNPC, Mele Kyari, they are demanding 5% reward for exposing the diversion and thefts of 48 million barrels of crude oil. Now, we're joined this morning to look into some of these allegations by Mr. Mike Ozekome, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. He joins us on our studios in Abuja. We also do have Yvier Richards, who is of the Anti-Corruption Observatory, also joining us via Zoom to just give their perspectives on this matter. Let's start with Mr. Ozekome. Good morning, and thank you again for joining us today. Now, this letter is making the rounds by this group, Semano. The lawyers have written, I think from the Lords and Temple, demanding certain things from the government. From your perspective, because they were quite categorical that some of these things, in fact, that it is indeed true. What have you found going through these documents?
Well, the documents are everywhere online. I've also read Chief Afe Babalola, Senior Advocate of Nigeria's letter. He replied to these documents. I've read it also in the hard copies of Punch and other newspapers last week. And I think the problem we are having now is that with the advent of online publications, many salacious, many untrue statements are put out there. Once some people are mentioned, some people's names are mentioned and indicted, people jump to conclusions. So we have become so lazy, intellectually lazy, that we cannot do some mental, some rigorous calculation or interrogation of issues to know whether they are true or not, once we see the banner headline. So when these allegations first came out, I was very inquisitive. I became interested. I said, 48 million barrels of crude oil leaving Nigeria and stored somewhere in the Republic of China. That would be a big deal for Nigeria that is grappling with economic challenges. And that made me to start doing some write-up and some interrogation of these issues. Is it true? But by the time I got Afe Babalola's own reply to their lawyer's letter, I discovered that this was nothing but a case of international cross-border fraudsters tried to dupe Nigeria in the name of 5% of a so-called $2.5 billion dollar whistleblowing fact that they found this $48 million, a million barrels stored somewhere in China. Now, $2.5 billion at the current exchange rate is about 1.2 trillion naira. And the company is saying it is entitled to 5% of that, which is $125 million. That will give you about 60 billion naira of the Nigerian people's money, not government's money, because when I hear people say government's money, government does not have money. It's money belonging to the Nigerian people. 60 billion naira, if shared for 36 states of the Federation, each state will get about 1.66 billion naira, which can build a big teaching hospital in each of the states of Nigeria. So I started to interrogate, could this be true? How did the 48 million barrels pass through Nigeria? Which port? Through which port? How did they land? What was Nigeria's OPEC cut for that period in 2015, July 2015? I'm aware, and if you Google it, the facts are there. As of July 2015, Nigeria's OPEC cut for oil, Nigeria was producing less than 1.6 million barrels per day, which means in 30 days, it will produce exactly 48 million barrels. So what this company, Samano, is saying, or was saying, is that a whole month's production of crude oil left the Nigerian shores and landed in China without any trace whatsoever. For God's sake, if we interrogate matters rigorously, intellectually, this is not possible. Where will Nigeria have money to go to the FAAC, the Federation Allocation Accounts, to be shelved under Section 162 of the 1999 Constitution for the 36 states and 774 local government areas in Nigeria, if a whole month's generated crude oil suddenly leaves Nigerian shores?
All right, let me just butt in here, because earlier on we tried to give a background, and we took statements from NATI, and still on NATI, about last year, a statement was put out that crude oil theft cost Nigeria 22 million barrels of oil just in the first half of 2019. So I can imagine in a year that would be about 44 million barrels. And you said that this seems impossible, but you and I know that a lot of things seem impossible until they happen. So looking at that in context, don't you still think that this is a possibility? Because NATI has said that crude oil theft costs us millions of barrels yearly.
Millions of barrels yearly, right? This was said to have been taken to China in 2015, right? The Chinese government with a regulated economy must know. If you read both letters, both from their lawyers and Afe Babalola's Chambers lawyers, and compare both facts, the Chinese government itself came out and denied it, that there was no such crude oil stored anywhere in their shores. They even went to United Nations to say so, that they don't have that evidence. Where is the evidence? There should be evidence of the movement of this oil. Who bought? Who sold? To whom? How did it get there? So, and if you interrogate the documents more, which are available online,
okay,
they wrote letters July and August 7th, 7 July, August 7, 2015, saying these barrels of crude oil were in China and that they were interested in buying it. They made an offer to buy these 48 million barrels. Then they went a step further. By August 2015, they said, we are no longer interested in buying this crude oil. We don't want to buy again.
Okay,
we
Mr. Sokoman, just a minute, pardon me to jump in now.
Corruption war.
Looking at all of these documents, I mean, yes, it will get people curious, wanting to find out what really is going on, whether it's true or not. But one wonders, I mean, Mr. Oyewole SAN is their counsel, and he wrote, because if they say that he is writing here saying that his client has documents, including bank transfer details, names of vessels and their captains, to show that the stolen products have been illicitly sold by some officials of the government and the NNPC who are said to be involved in the implementation of the presidential directive to investigate matters pertaining to stolen crude. Is it that the documents or whatever it is that they have or shown to him, he might not have been real, original, for him to take this on by himself? What is?
The documents documents. I will want you to interrogate these two documents side by side. It's easy to make allegations. When you make, you have to prove. By the documents from the lawyers from Afe Babalola's chambers, they said these letters you have put are themselves fake letters, allegedly written in 2015, bearing a logo of NNPC, Shell Petroleum Development Company, Bonny Terminal, and then the federal government coat of arms. They said no letterhead of NNPC is like that. There's nothing like that. That NNPC has a letterhead with its headquarters in Abuja that does not have the federal coat of arms, does not have Bonny Terminal, does not have Shell Development, does not have oil company. I have had the privilege of doing some oil and gas matters over the years, for more than 25 years, where I have not been able to yet come across such a letterhead. So it is clear to me, based on this, that some international fraudsters are at work. I get such letters every day. People tell me to take matters to court.
Okay, just one moment, Mr. Let's take this to Mr. Evie Richards, just to have his own take on this. We'll come back to you, just to have his own take on all of this. Mr. Evie Richards, from your own observatory, what have you taken, how have you taken this whole thing on board? Stolen 48 million barrels, NATI's report. There's also a report from Chatham House about, stolen crude oil over the years in Nigeria. From your observation, what have you seen? How do you take this all on board?
Well, what actually posed the serious challenge to me is why the NNPC took so long after receiving the consent from the whistleblower to inform the anti-graft agencies to swing into action to investigate the issue. When you receive a consent, the first thing you do is assess it. After assessing the concern, then you move on to addressing the concern. As far as I know, the NNPC is neither an intelligence agency, nor is it an anti-graft agency. So a concern of such magnitude was received in the month of June 2015. And the anti-graft agencies were not immediately contacted to go and verify the veracity of that concern. They did their own assessment and concluded that there was no iota of truth until a lot of pressure became applied on them by the whistleblower. And it was at that time that they now decided, okay, let us begin to address the concern that this whistleblower raised, and for which they decided to contact the anti-graft agencies. For me, that's a serious challenge that I would like to be looked into. Why the delay? That's number one. On the other hand, the documents that came from the whistleblower, it has names. Of the names that are there is only two people, only one, because the document that came did not even bear Baru's name, the one that I saw. But the names that are there, they are all of them are alive. They are here in Nigeria. So what interrogation has been done thus far? What manner of investigation has been done thus far? And I'm also very curious that all these issues would not have taken this much, given the fact that the president himself is the Minister of Petroleum and can compel the height of the intelligence agency that we have in Nigeria to swing into action. I'm aware that the NIA has a branch in the mission in China. So it was not going to be difficult to verify whether we actually have crude in China stored in tanks and all of that. But the whistleblower says that there are documents. The documents are there. The document that came from Bonny Terminal has the name of an engineer that signed it. That engineer is a Nigerian. Has he been contacted? Has he made any kind of comments? So, you know, it's neither here nor there.
All right, Mr. Richards, let's try to see if we can get here in this, just to get, you know, some form of, you know, definitive, you know, response to this. Because if you see the statement from the NNPC saying that, well, looking at the narrative, it is impossible, 48 million barrels of crude. I mean, how does that even make sense? That's the narrative the NNPC is putting forth. But from the evidences you have seen, the narrative, is such possible? Because I think that's a major bone of contention. Is it possible to have conducted such operation?
One thing I remember very clearly is that at the inception of this administration, the president himself was on a daily basis saying that Nigerian crude has been stolen, is being stolen. And I think because of that, a little committee was set up to look at how the crudes are being stolen. Listen, you know, we know those who produce crude in Nigeria. The NPDC is one under the NNPC. And then we have the joint venture partners. They are all known. How is this, to understand how the crude leaves when we know the major operators is a question that we need to unravel. But looking at the data from NAITI, this country, anything can happen. I won't be able to say, no, let us not look into this concern, because at 1.6 million barrels a day, 48 million barrels will have been equal to a month's production of Nigeria. It's not impossible that $48 million may have left the shores of Nigeria. But to confirm that, exhaustive investigation has to be carried out to ascertain whether this is truth or false. The lawyer to Lord and to Samano is a Nigerian. The lawyer to the NNPC is a Nigerian. Both parties are local, even though they have international players. So it's an issue that we can actually scrutinize and not to jump into conclusion that this is not possible. For me, I think that conclusion is hasty.
Mr. Ozekome, back to Mr. Ozekome, these issues that are being raised, you said it's impossible to come up with 48 million barrels of crude oil from Nigeria to China. But from data that we have shown you, 150 to 250,000 barrels per day are lifted. Isn't it possible to have done this over time, over maybe 6 months, 1 year? Because from the reports that we read to you from NAITI, there was a review carried out between 2009 and 2018 that shows that this was done over about 10 years. Isn't it possible to have done that over the years?
It is possible for that. Just a moment. It is possible. Don't forget that this allegation came up in July 2015. And the 48 million barrels was already said to be there by that July 15, 2015. We are not talking of between then and now. I want us to put this in historical perspective. That is why I think my brother there, who is speaking on the other side, did not appear to have also seen the other documents. He probably saw the documents put out by the other lawyers he called Tempo and Partners, and appeared not to have seen the ones put out by Afe Babalola. In the ones put out there, it was made clear that the federal government, I'm not a fan of the federal government, everybody knows that. That's why I decided to scrutinize this matter, that they sent a delegation to China to find out whether this was true. That they could not find the truth from the Chinese government that such barriers were there. That they then contacted the EFCC, the police and the DSS to make their own investigations. That they did and came out blank, that nothing like that was found. That one DIG, Anthony Ogbizi, wrote the report that the entire allegation was a scam.
But just one moment, Mr. Zekome. There are many issues that one can look at as far as this is concerned. Just one moment. If you would also go into, there are several documents that one can reference in this. We've talked about the NATI document. We've talked about the Chatham House document. And we have also looked at a number of other things. In 2018, the National Economic Council received a report from KPMG that $8.1 trillion naira was not, given to the federal government by the NNPC and 16 other agencies. There is also the 2016 Auditor General's report that record that there are certain monies that were not remitted to the federal government as and when due. As a matter of fact, one of them was said to be unconstitutional deductions running to 900 and something million naira. So with all of these figures, doesn't it lead credence to certain lacuna that the NNPC may have, let out to make all these things possible and difficult for people to believe that there is no such thing as 48 million barrels of oil missing?
Yes, that is what I mean. I call it media trial. Media trial is a trial that does not give the other person a fair hearing. And that is why I've been against it. That is why I've been against it. Now, if you hear one side, then you hear the other. All these are possible. But the question is not one of possibility. Has it happened? That is where we are. And they are saying that these same people have since been charged to court. I do not know whether you have seen that aspect of it, for trying to scam the federal government of Nigeria of money they did not earn. They said they had blown a whistle, as a result of which they are entitled, allegedly, to $125 million, which is 60 billion naira. But if you look at their letters of 2015, they were merely saying they wanted to purchase that same oil, not to blow a whistle to help the government. The whistle-blowing policy, I have had clients who have blown whistles. I have urged some to go and blow whistle. Some have blown when they did not want to pay them. I went in, I stepped in, you must pay. Now, the whistle-blowing policy of the federal government of Nigeria, to the best of my knowledge, came into being about November, December 2016. It was not then in operation. You couldn't have been blowing a whistle for something in futuro, something in the future, that like Nostradamus, the man who saw tomorrow, you did not know such a policy will exist. Then you are blowing a whistle ahead. Meanwhile, you wanted to buy this oil. When it was that one was not working, you turned around and said it was not whistle blowing.
Pardon me, we're out of time, but we need to get Ms. Yvette to also give us quickly just his closing thoughts before we wrap up. Mr. Richards, could you please go ahead and just give us your perspective before we wrap up?
Well, I saw the letter that came from Afe Babalola and company. My concern really is that letter was written only about 2 days ago. The issue we are looking at occurred since 2015. And I think that letter also accused the whistleblower of so many anomalies. And I think that later has been compelled due to pressure on the federal government. That's not to say that this thing is real anyway. But my final take will be that the whistleblower, first and foremost, did not blow the whistle through the right channel, because the Ministry of Finance, Federal Ministry of Finance, would have been the first port of call if it were looking to that policy.
Richard, well, the thing is, if they went to court and the DSS and the FCC are looking into those matters, well, those are agencies saddled with such responsibility, but we'll see what eventually plays out, what they decide at the end of the day. But we do thank you both, Mr. Michael Zekoma, SAN, and Vivier Richard, Anti-Corruption Observatory. Thank you both for talking to us on this matter. We're back in a moment. Please join us again.